What does Jesus' title, the Son of Man, refer to? Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. And we see Jesus being referred to as the Son of God and the Son of Man a number of times in the New Testament. And Son of God is clear enough, but Son of Man is a little confusing, but actually has more divine implications than does the title Son of God.
No, it does not. Hello and Assalamu alaikum. Dan McClellan is a Mormon, non-Trinitarian Christian scholar of the Bible and religion. I like to keep him within my earshot as he shares many important and fresh perspectives about Christianity regularly. But his claim here that Jesus' title, Son of Man, somehow has more divine implications than the title Son of God is seriously bewildering to me. While even the title Son of God does not have any divine implications, certainly not in the sense adopted later on in Christendom that continues to this day, but let's leave that for another time. Let's concede that the obvious ownership by or connection with God in this prepositional phrase construction could in principle be confusing for some people to decipher. So deriving divinity from Son of God isn't entirely incomprehensible. But when the owner in the prepositional phrase is man and not even God, it still has more divine implications, is utterly incongruous with how language works. Now don't get me wrong, I'm familiar with all the lore there is in Christianity about this title, but sometimes it helps to approach a subject like a layman would, as it makes room for new perspectives on an age-old debate. So just for the sake of argument, I'll ignore all the lore and let this video be the end-all and be-all on the subject. So let's see how Dan supports his claim.
Son of God comes primarily from the Greco-Roman world, and it was used to refer to the Caesar. And so it was primarily a title applied to humans who had some kind of pretensions to divinity. Son of Man, however, is uniquely Jewish, and specifically uniquely Greco-Roman period Jewish. But it's based on a phrase we see a number of times in the Hebrew Bible, Ben Adam, or Bar Enosh, which means son of man or son of humanity or son of a human. And it has nothing to do with divinity in its earliest usage. For instance, we see it a bunch of times in the book of Ezekiel, where God calls Ezekiel Ben Adam, and that is a way to distinguish Ezekiel from God, from the divine. The Son of Man is part of a broader idiom where, in order to refer to a member of a group, you could call a person a son or a daughter of that group. So a son of God or gods meant a god. A son of the prophets meant one of the prophets. Son of man meant a male human. Daughter of man meant a female human. And so you can think of it kind of like in the Jungle Book, where they refer to Mowgli as a man cub. Just means he's a human. So it's a very similar idea. And in Ezekiel, God refers to Ezekiel as a son of man in order to contrast Ezekiel's nature with that of God. So you could render it mortal.
He missed out on an important meaning though, that is, son of Adam, the first human, but that was just an aside. The term does simply mean someone from among the mankind, and is the biblical and Quranic way to refer to a human, cause since all humans are the progeny of Adam and Eve, calling someone a son of Adam or Bani Adam is simply a term of endearment that keeps the mortal status of the addressee fully in sight. As I said, leaving the claims about Son of God for now, let's focus on the Son of Man title here. So his claim that Son of Man is uniquely Jewish, let's go with that. Okay, it is uniquely Jewish. I mean, there's no dispute that it is indeed used frequently in the Hebrew Bible. So let's run with it. Hence, this is just more exposition of the expression that aligns with the discussion so far. The expression does appear over 100 times in the Old Testament, with over 90 times just in Ezekiel. The only thing to note herein is him caveating his statement. It has nothing to do with divinity, with the condition in its earliest usage. So, this clause in its earliest usage seems to be the clause where I think he'll make his case. So let's keep that in mind and move along.
So it is strictly a human title in the Hebrew Bible until we get to the book of Daniel, and specifically Daniel 7:13, where Daniel has this vision of one like a son of man who comes in the clouds of heaven. And in the book of Daniel, this is intended to mean one that looked like a human, a male human. So it's just a description of this mysterious figure as anthropomorphic in appearance, as male presenting. So that's what it meant when Daniel 7:13 was written. However, as we get deeper into the Greco-Roman period, and Daniel 7 was written around the middle of the 2nd century BCE, so we're already in the Greco-Roman period. But as we get deeper into the Greco-Roman period, this mysterious figure takes on more and more significance. And so when we get to the parables of Enoch in the middle of the book of 1st Enoch, which probably date to the 1st century BCE, we have a figure who is referred to as the Son of Man. And this figure is some kind of divine intermediary figure. They are summoned to appear before God. Something is going on with the divine name. They are worshipped by everyone on earth. This is some kind of divine intermediary figure who is developing in Greco-Roman period Judaism.
No, I'm not going to even consider the book of Enoch for any kind of substantiation or even corroboration. It is not canonical to the Jewish or most of the Christian denominations, and therefore does not deserve any kind of evidentiary value in such important debates whatsoever. So, if that is the only evidence he is relying on, dare I say his case is doomed before it even started? Moving on.
And this is the tradition that the New Testament authors are drawing from. So when they call Jesus Son of Man, they're identifying Jesus as the one that was being spoken of in the earlier Greco-Roman period Jewish text.
Slight disagreement here. Now, they are not calling Jesus as Son of Man. The expression originates and is almost always used by Jesus to describe himself. So let's not create a hedge here by attributing it to the New Testament authors instead, and then using that hedge to slip in any wishful interpretation later. But let's carry on.
And something that was very helpful in this, in my opinion, is a specific version of Daniel 7:13 that was translated into Greek. Because in that passage it says the one like a son of man came to the Ancient of Days. Because in Greek the preposition is heos, unto, to, until the Ancient of Days. But there is a manuscript tradition that has a slightly different reading, where it says the Son of Man came hos, the Ancient of Days, which is not to, unto, until, it is as. So there's a manuscript tradition that has the Son of Man coming as the Ancient of Days, or identified with the Ancient of Days.
So one manuscript tradition? Really? That is how you make a case? Why can't people just stick to their own canonical scriptures to make their points? Is it too much to ask for? Not only is this such a flimsy argument, basing it on a manuscript tradition other than the canonical ones, it does not even fit in with the text at all and is spit out by the text itself. Let's have a look at Daniel 7:13. And behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a Son of Man, and he came to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him. So, if the Son of Man came as the Ancient of Days, as Dan is alluding, who was he presented before? This is some doppelganging fiction being presented as an alternative interpretation. The Ancient of Days is being presented before the Ancient of Days. You see how God's words defend themselves? This stitch, even if someone in the past tried to weave it in, is completely rejected by the text in context.
So here we have a conflation of identities somewhat similar to what's going on with the angel of Adonai in Exodus 3 and Genesis 16 and Genesis 22 and Judges 6 and Judges 13 and a couple of other places, where the identity of this intermediary figure is somehow mixed up and entangled with God's own identity. So the Son of Man can function as the Ancient of Days, not because they are the Ancient of Days, but because they can manifest the Ancient of Days identity, presence, power, authority.
There's no reason to equate or analogize this with the angel of the Lord, especially on this flimsy an argument, because as opposed to the angel of the Lord, there is no place in the canonical Old Testament where the Son of Man gets conflated with Adonai or God. And the conflation of angel of the Lord with God isn't even something that ever led to the consequences that Dan is trying to reach at. It only ever merely pointed to the transparent vesselhood that angels represent when exercising God's authority, with no part in God's divinity whatsoever.
So calling Jesus the Son of Man is appealing to this tradition from a century or two before about some mysterious intermediary figure known as the Son of Man who can manifest God's own power and presence and authority. It's a pre-existing tradition that developed within Greco-Roman period Judaism. So to call Jesus Son of Man is even more divine than to call him a Son of God. It is an inner Jewish tradition that is associated with the conflation of the identities of God and this mysterious intermediary figure.
Okay, now it looks like a full-blown bait and switch. No, the Son of Man cannot be conflated with God based on the Book of Enoch or one manuscript tradition. And no, Son of Man cannot be analogized with an angel of the Lord. And no, they are not calling Jesus the Son of Man. He himself is. So that's all I wanted to talk about it in the context of Dan's claims. But separate from his video, generally speaking, I want to say a few more words on the subject. Why would you even resort to such indirect and flimsy evidence to establish the divinity of Jesus? Just think about it. Whether there is one God or more, or whether the one God is made up of three constituent gods, do you think it to be a non-fundamental or an unimportant belief? If it is fundamental, and it most definitely is, shouldn't it be established through clear and concise statements that are as abound in the Bible as the one God Yahweh, Adonai, is? I mean, just ask the Jews and Muslims to establish the oneness of God from their scriptures. Why would there be a need to catch at straws then? That too using expressions that are actually the prime evidence for Jesus' non-divinity? I mean, he took up this expression for himself, yes, to channel that Son of Man from Daniel, to whom all the dominion was to be given, but more importantly, also to clearly and repeatedly assert his mortal humanity and non-divinity unabashedly. What better way than to use this unambiguous term as a title that has been used over 100 times in the OT to express the mere humanity of kings and prophets. Otherwise, Ezekiel would have been a bigger person in the Godhead, clocking the term in over 90 times, than Jesus clocking it in over 80 times. So, all in all, this whole approach confounds me. Divinity of a human prophet, the Messiah no less, that too from within the Jewish tradition, cannot be established based on indirect, vague, and equivocal references. Abrahamic religion's teachings are just too resilient to afford such a monumental aberration.